Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my channel. I'm your host, That Creepy Reading, and today I got 5 more Let's Not Meet stories for your viewing consumption. However, before I start, I want to start by promoting a little bit of positivity. Recently, one of my good friends, his name is Kakio on YouTube, targeted another YouTuber and now he's getting some negative comments. While the majority of the video is positive, there are still people hardcore shitting on him in the comment section, and if you guys would do me a favor, simply look at Keiko's channel, and maybe watch a few of his videos, and leave a positive comment or two, it would mean the absolute world to me and to him. Being a YouTuber isn't easy, and dealing with that kind of thing, so if I can do anything of my own channel, it would be to possibly spread a little bit of positivity along with all the negative, horrific feelings that I do. His channel will be linked in the description below. Furthermore, I want to ask you guys, what do you think I should do with my channel? I want to make another show, and I want some ideas from you before I simply go after one. If you guys submit to me a show idea, as long as it's horrific and fitting with the macabre, I will possibly shout you guys out should I use your idea. With that being said, understand that every single one of these stories is not written by me, but rather by the amazing users of Let's Not Meet. Remember, each of these stories are purported to be true by the Reddit itself and the people who submit them. If things that are more realistic can disturb you, this will be your only goddamn warning. With that being said, sit back, relax, and turn the lights down, and welcome to the dungeon. I'm your host, That Creepy Reading, and today I'm signing off.
Creepy Cops in Rural Area by Everyday Adventures. Made this account just to post this since I'm a longtime fan of this thread, so here it goes. For a little background info, at the time it happened, my friend and I were 18 years old and freshmen in college. It's a long story, but I promise, every part is necessary to understand it as a whole. This frightening situation happened during Thanksgiving break. My friend Angela and I were high school acquaintances, but got really close during college, since we were from the same city and started interacting more because of the fact, naturally, we carpooled to and from our university to our hometown, which is around 5 hours away by car. At the end of Thanksgiving break, we leave around 11 p.m. and start our trip back. Around 3 hours into the trip, Angela, the driver, tells me that she's starting to feel a bit sleepy. So rather than stop in the middle of nowhere and change seats, I decide to talk to her and keep her busy. We get into a really deep conversation, etc., and for fun, we decide to Snapchat a little of the road trip with the flashlight on. I know, I'm stupid. After laughing and Snapchatting, we see police sirens go on right behind us. Great. It's 2 a.m. and cops pull us over. They stayed in their car for a few minutes, which seemed odd, but oh well, we thought. As I see 2 of them walking towards us, they whispered something to each other, but we didn't think anything of it. One of them goes to Angela's window and the other to mine.
Hey there, ladies.
This one by Angela's window says,
How are y'all doing tonight?
With this creepy ass smile. None suspecting Angela responds good. She then asks what was the reason for pulling us over. Going over the speed limit, he says, Mind you, we were Snapchatting right before he pulled us over, and Angela was purposely going a little under the speed limit to not crash and just to be safe while we were Snapchatting. Confused, she just goes, okay, and asks if he needs any documentation, to which he responds, no. While all of this is going on, the second cop by my window signals me to lower the window, and I oblige. He then starts making insinuating comments and gestures towards me, like pointing his flashlight towards my crotch while smiling, telling me how long my legs were as an excuse to look at them because I'm wearing shorts.
Oh, so it's just you two. I see.
And what we were doing at this time in the middle of nowhere, amongst other things that honestly were not related at all to pulling us over and out of line for police officers to be asking. Then the first cop asks,
"Are y'all in college?"
To which I respond, "Yes, actually we're headed to university now." I knew we fucked up there because they now knew we weren't heading anywhere close. He then proceeds to say,
"College girls, huh?"
to the other cop again with the eerie smile. Honestly, what the fuck? By this time, we were beyond creeped out and wanted to get out of this situation ASAP, but these creeps wouldn't let us go. They kept trying to make conversation while implying really weird and sexual stuff like, "Y'all know where we're at? There's a prison nearby here, you know."
"I sure hope nothing happens to you ladies."
And,
"Do you think anyone would know if something happened to you here, all alone on the road?"
they said this all while smiling. I'm in shock, and I can't believe this is happening to us. These are the men we're supposed to trust and rely on, but here we are trying to free ourselves of them for our own safety. Wanting to finish this now, I ask, "Are we getting a ticket?" To which the cop by the driver's side window says,
"No, but I'll give you a verbal warning."
All as I feel the other cop staring right at me. He wrote something in his notepad and said,
"Y'all be careful now. Wouldn't want anything bad to happen to you pretty ladies. Ain't that right?"
Then the officer next to me tries to open the door. The hell? Out of nowhere, he tried to open the door, but thankfully the doors were locked and my window wasn't low enough for him to reach in and manually unlock the door. After this, I was in total shock, just staring at him while he just stared back. No explanation or anything. Angela quickly starts up the car, says thank you, have a good night, and speeds off. We didn't call our parents right then and there because it was the dead of night and we didn't want to worry them, but instead, Angela's boyfriend, who was already waiting for us at the university, and asked to be called and updated in case of anything. After driving in silence while constantly checking if they were behind us for about 30 minutes, I start talking to Angela. We're both shaken and speechless. I ask her why stop us in the first place if we didn't commit any infraction. Then we realized they saw that we were two girls because of the stupid flashlight I used while recording and pulled us over. They also probably stayed in the car before walking towards us to check if it was actually only two of us or something of the sort. They gave an uncomfortable aura, and I wouldn't be surprised if they were planning on raping us, or worse. Honestly, I don't know what would have happened if the doors were unlocked, and wouldn't like to even imagine. So, lessons to learn. 1. Don't do road trips in the dead of night, especially if you're girls. Lesson 2. Don't unknowingly trust cops. There are good ones as there are evil. Lesson 3. Always have someone know where you're at.
The Bicycle Man by The Bicycle Girl. Just a little background for the story. I grew up in Mississippi, and like most Mississippi kids, my parents were super young when they had me. On top of that, my mom has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder since she was 14. She's also been a major alcoholic most of her life and all of my childhood. My dad worked all the time, which meant that my younger sister and I spent all of our time with our mama. Sometimes when she needed a break from us or wanted to go on another bender, she would just leave us in the care of our great aunt, who I should mention was 98 years old at the time and very senile. For an alcoholic though, I'm sure leaving us for our senile mother seemed like a little bit of a step up from leaving us with the orthodontist. My grandmother used to tell us stories about being at my great aunt's house with random people, and how people would just wander up asking to use their phone, and all that jazz. She claims that a few of them were wearing hospital gowns. I was 8 years old at the specific time this incident happened. My great aunt lived on a portion of our family property that had yet to be sold to a new golf course and housing development, mainly because she refused to give up her own home. Imagine a brand new golf course and lots of nicer homes. Then imagine right off to the right of those nice homes is a 60-year-old farmhouse with overgrown pastures to the right and left of it. My mom dropped us off like normal sometime afternoon on Friday. My sister, who is 5, went straight to the living room to play with toy horses next to my great aunt, who was wrapped up in knitting a blanket on her recliner. She had an old box TV that maybe picked up 3 or so channels, which was fine since she only really watched The Price is Right. My great aunt was pretty hyped about canned biscuits. I never knew if it was because she actually liked it, or if the idea of canned biscuits was something so out of the box and new for her that it just blew her senile mind away. While I was getting water from the kitchen, my great aunt called out to me, "Spencer, can you put some biscuits in the oven? And don't burn them this time." I forgot to mention she was ornery as hell. She literally gave new meaning to steel magnolias. The timer for the biscuits went off, so I went to go grab the pot holder, but I couldn't find one. I walked into the laundry room to find one, and just so happened to see something strange out of the corner of my eye. The way that our house is set up is that if you drove up a long dirt road which was curved to the right and then turned into a carport, as soon as you enter the house from the carport, the laundry room is to your immediate left. And the kitchen is to your right, or to the right, with a living room attached to the kitchen. It was an extra wing in the house, though she never used it. Instead, everyone hung out in the additional living room closer to the laundry room on the other side of the house. Anyways, I walked to the large window in the laundry room and looked out onto a large old willow tree with a makeshift floodlight attached to the top of the trunk. I thought I saw the figure of a man standing under that goddamn tree. I couldn't tell if it was the shadows or the tree or what the hell it was, so I called for my aunt to come check it out. I could hear her old chair squeak as she got up and the shuffle of her slippers as she started to walk towards me. When she got to me and to the window, she pushed her glasses up the bridge of her nose and asked, "What are you looking at?" I pointed towards a tree and said, "I think there's someone out there." She squinted her eyes and stretched her neck like a turtle out closer to the glass. She studied the tree for a moment before throwing her hands up and laughing. I was so confused. She looked down at her old leather watch and whispered to herself, "Oh, silly me, look at the time." At this point, I thought she was going fucking nuts, and being 98 years old, it probably would have been a valid observation. She began to shuffle back out of the laundry room, sitting without saying a word to me. At this point, I was so weirded out that I had almost forgotten about the shadowy figure outside. Instead, I called out one more time. "Time for what?" She continued shuffling towards the kitchen, making a waving motion of her hands, and said, "The bicycle man's hungry." I followed her into the kitchen and back into the spare living room. She clicked on a lamp next to an old, torn black leather couch. Like I said, this is an extra living room in a different wing of the house. We never went in there. In fact, most of the time, she kept the door to this room locked from the kitchen. As she flicked on the old brass lamp, though, I could see a bed spot and a pillow laid on the couch. Not only that, but there were 2 half-empty glasses of water on the same table as the lamp. She picked up the pillow and fluffed it, and then straightened the bedspread. As she did this, she began to tell me about this bicycle man. She said, "The bicycle man visits me every night. We have some dinner and coffee, and I put him to bed, and he rides off in the morning." At this point, 8-year-old me was completely creeped out. I could feel my stomach turning and my throat clogging up, and I began to feel my muscles tremble. I walked away, quietly, back into the laundry room, crawling on my hands and knees so that this weird figure couldn't see me outside from the window. I put my hands on the window sill and pulled myself up just barely enough to peer out. The shadowy figure was nowhere to be seen. I stood up and checked the lock on the window. Then I began locking all the doors and windows. Luckily, my great aunt didn't see me do this. She had already settled back into her chair. I closed myself into one of the spare bedrooms, and I pulled up the house phone with me. I desperately tried calling my mom on her new Nokia black cell phone, but I had no avail. I didn't know my dad's work number at this point, and this was before he had gotten a cell phone. I made my sister share a bed with me that night, and I laid awake and I stayed as still as I could. I remember slowing my breathing so I could hear whatever noise he may be trying to make as this stranger entered the house. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember the sound of my mom clinking around to the kitchen the next morning. As soon as I realized what time it is, I hauled ass into the kitchen and explained what happened. My mom looked really concerned, and she asked my great aunt about it, to which my great aunt gave her the same story that she had given me the night before about him visiting. I told my mom about the makeshift bed in the spare living room too. We went to go take a look at the couch. Another half-empty glass of water was on the nightstand, and the bedspread was all messy. It was as if someone had slept there in the previous night and had left in a hurry. My mom was so freaked out. So she called her friend at the sheriff's office about the stranger on a bicycle. A few days later, my mom got a call from her friend at the sheriff's office. They'd pick up a guy on a bicycle who was caught trying to break into one of the new houses on the golf course. They'd found a knife, rope, and several bags of biscuits on him. Apparently, he had been responsible for several break-ins in this area and had been camping out on our property. I tried to find some newspaper articles about the bicycle man, but I've had no luck. And I would try to get the reports and records from my great aunt, but she's been dead for maybe around 10 years now. So, creepy bicycle man. Let's not meet again.
The Black Barn with the Psycho Inside by Tooth of an Apple. I work up at the stables on Sundays, being a horse-loving teenager, and because I get a discount on my livery fees. A few months ago, in January, something rather disturbing happened, which scarred me and my horse for life. I was doing my usual morning job of tacking up when a guy who isn't a rider walks into the yard and approaches my trainer and the yard owner. They start talking, and a few more people join them. They all look worried, and the guy is holding up a piece of paper. A few minutes later, my trainer rushes over to me and explains what this guy said. Apparently, a man has gone missing, but his dog had been spotted up by the Black Barn in the middle of two fields, which is a place where both me and my friend ride a lot, as crossing the fields and using the brittleway is quicker than the road. It isn't accessible by road, so he wants riders to go up there to see if the man, and also his dog, are up there. Apparently, this guy who went missing is a bit odd, and has told us not to approach him, only to ring the police if he's there, and to stay up there to surround him if he is not armed. My trainer then says I have to go up with some of the other liveries and workers, as she needs to stay and teach and look after the younger stable girls. I agree and set off to tack up my horse, Silver. A bit of information: Silver is not a big horse and is very petite in his build. He's an Arab crossed with a thoroughbred and an ex-racehorse, meaning he can put on some speed and can be very flighty despite being 22 years old. I'm not a big person, only about 5'5", and I look mature for my 17 years. Skip forward about 30 minutes, and I'm galloping along the brittle path. I see the barn up ahead, surrounded by stubble fields which haven't been dug up yet. It just gives me the chills, seeing it. It looks so out of place up there, so unnatural. I hear a dog barking up there, and red flags start waving in my brain. It could just be a dog out with its owner, but it doesn't seem to come from the barn. The other riders spread out and ride across the field slowly. We're approaching at just about a trot, Silver not wanting to stay in a walk out of nerves. I was the first person to ride around to the open side of the barn. I suppose I was perhaps the stupidest one to go first, or the only one whose horse isn't scared of dogs, as the other horses were getting nervous from the barking. What I notice as I start walking around there is the dog is whimpering now, rather than barking. Also, Silver is being very hesitant, while a few minutes ago, he was pacing along rather fast. He had his ears forward and was craning his neck to see what was there. What happened next, I was not expecting. This guy bursts out, yelling and cursing at me, waving the kitchen knife at me. I scream as Silver just bolts, ears back and absolutely thundering along like his tail is on fire. I'm crying, terrified that this guy has a gun as well, that the other riders will be subject to this psycho. Silver would not stop and was pulling so hard at the reins that my arms were aching from trying to steady him up. I kept glancing back and I saw horses retreating quickly. I guess they heard me scream and I knew that the guy was there. We kept galloping, even when crossing the road until Silver was blowing and foaming at the mouth. We were now on a concrete track which went down between two fields. I was well away from the barn now, and my heart was just about to still in my chest. I dismounted and held Silver while I called my friend, and this is where I will let her details take over. Apparently, upon hearing me scream and seeing my horse take off, everyone knew the guy was there. He came around the side and started cursing at all of them, telling them that it was his fault he was there, and that he would kill them all, and various other obscenities. The police were called and came screaming down the road and managed to get over to him by running through the massive field. He was now in the back of the car, and apparently the police took the dog as well. I ended up walking halfway home, leading Silver. He was so tired that when I rode him halfway, we couldn't go faster than a walk. Poor horse. I couldn't stop thinking about what would have happened if the guy had a gun, if I wasn't on a horse, and if we riders hadn't gone up to find that bastard. I'm ever grateful to Silver for running away and not bucking me off. Without him, I'd either be injured or dead. Silver will never go in that field, no matter how much I try and make him. To be honest, even I hate riding past it, and I'll go the long way on the road. So, creepy guy in the black barn, let's hope both Silver and myself never ever meet you again.
The Suicide by The Doorman, 1738. Okay, I'm gonna try to make this short and sweet. I've just found this page and I started reading these stories, and honestly, so many of them sound fake. But then I remember this story. Not only is the story insane, but it's only one of my many unfortunate stories and experiences that happened in my adolescence. To begin, I lived with my single mom in a small duplex on the wrong side of town. I was probably 12 and she was probably 34. I'm too busy to do the math right now. But she was a complete party animal. I mean, she was always partying, whether it was drinking herself into an early grave or shacking up with a guy so, well, she could pay bills. She was always up to something, and it made my life hell. Anyway, she came home one day and introduced me to some guy. We'll just call him Andy, so everyone can remain anonymous. Anyway, she gave me the usual spiel about he was gonna be my new daddy and blah blah blah, we are going to live with him. I was shocked. I never heard of Andy, and now we're moving in with this strange man who I've yet to ever meet or hear about. I was confused. I asked my mom why in the hell we're moving with him, and she just said she loved him and it was gonna happen. Damn my feelings and all. She said that they had been dating for 2 months, and he was the one. So Mom packed our stuff and we moved away. At first, it wasn't so bad. He lived in an old duplex he had bought and was remodeling, and I had the entire part of it to myself. He had a massive movie collection, and I basically just watched movies all day and did dishes for pizza at the gas station next door. A few months later, I started school, and that's when everything started changing. It was a very small town, and everyone, for some reason, instantly hated me. I was picked on mercilessly, and the kids were pretty violent. I had never had a problem at any other school before, but for some reason, I was relentlessly tortured by almost everyone I met. I started to think it was just because I was an outsider, until after school, one day, some kids started telling me that my house was haunted, and that they said that a girl killed herself in there, and that I was a freak if I lived there. I had no idea what was going on. I rode my bike back home, asked my mom, why did kids say that? And she told me that Andy's last girlfriend was crazy and shot herself in a duplex I stayed in. She lived, though. She's just in a mental institution for treatment, and she didn't tell me because she knew I was already happy moving in with yet another guy. It was at this point when I started to notice that Andy was a little off. He was very emotionally abusive. He constantly made fun of my ability to do anything and would push me out of the way and throw his weight around like it was a game. I thought he was trying to mold me or trying to make me into a man, but I guess he found out I knew about his gal pal and started treating my mom in the same manner. My mom worked at a restaurant 30 minutes away from the house, and he owned a scrap metal shop. She started to notice that he would always be hanging around and harassing her coworkers. One of these days, one of the girls she worked with had a complete mental breakdown and tried to climb into an already preheated oven and kill herself. When my mom went to go visit her, she told her that it was her fault and that she wasn't coming to work again and would not speak to her again. My mom got freaked out and she decided to visit the ex-girlfriend to see if Andy had been like this before or to find out what had happened. When she got into the room, the girl told her to go home. My mom thought she meant leave the hospital, but the girl said, no, leave him and do it very quickly. My mother panicked. She ran home, called my uncles to pick us up, and we stayed the night with them. And the next day at around 3 p.m., they called her and set up a time to get the rest of her stuff. She told them to forget about the stuff and just come get her now. She was hiding in the bushes in a dirt road. My uncles found her, and what she revealed to us was terrifying. She went to the metal shop at Andy's request to talk. The place was empty. When she arrived, he asked her to stay. She said no, and that's when he shoved her into his office room and drilled screws into the door to keep it shut. He yelled at her for hours, and after 2 straight hours of verbal abuse, he slid a gun under the door and told her if she wouldn't be with him, she needed to kill herself. He said no one would miss a whore and that I didn't love her. She said that she was close and it was scary, but she snapped out of it and kicked herself out of one of the windows. She had cuts all over herself from crawling out of glass. When she called the police, they said they couldn't prove anything, and it turned out it was the same cop to investigate the last shooting. She tried online dating for a few years and met a guy named Cole. After 2 weeks of talking, Cole sent a message that said, "It took me forever to find you." Mom thought that was sweet, until Cole revealed himself to be Andy. She was so scared. We had to move from where we were living again. And let me tell you guys, hand to God, that's a true story. So, Andy, whatever the fuck you think you're doing, let's not meet again. Hey guys, I want to quickly add a bit of an editorial thing here. There's a person who commented on this guy's subreddit saying that he felt it was a bit insensitive to judge and condemn most of Let's Not Meet stories for being fake. And while a lot of them are proven to be fake, many of them are very real, and it's just a place for victims to post and report their stories to anyone who are willing to offer sympathy. and I kind of want to try to mitigate any comment drama that may happen because of that intro. The doorman actually commented back saying that it wasn't supposed to be to condemn them, but rather offer a initial perspective of how he saw the Reddit itself at first. But he now actually, believes a lot of the stuff that comes from there, because his own story was pretty crazy itself. And remember, life can be more strange than what you think. With that being said, let's move on. Chased Through the Woods by Cultists by Sawyer Olsen. When I was 13, my buddy Jake and I would spend a lot of time exploring and messing around in the forests and in the mountains that surrounded our town. We would often go on night hikes, sometimes for hours, especially when there was a full moon out. It was on one of these nights that I had the most fucked up, terrifying experience of my entire life. A place we would often hang out were these old ruins at the bend of an old fire road. There were two buildings. One was a sort of smaller shack and the other was a two-story brick structure without a roof. Apparently, they were once used for logging or something. There was some funny graffiti painted on the walls. One of my favorites read, "Casey can't give a blowjob," and under was, in different color cursive, was, "No, Brian, you just have a small dick," smiley face. I never really paid attention to some of the other graffiti, a lot of which was creepy looking symbols, along with paragraphs of complete gibberish in red that took up entire walls. Someone clearly took the care to write them, but I paid little to no attention. During the end of our summer break, there was a full moon out. It was a harvest moon, when the moon shines bright and orange in the night sky. We decided to go out and head to the other ruins, build a little fire, and look at the stars. We invited our neighbor and her friend to come with us, probably to try to play Truth or Dare or some shit like that. They were in our grade, and I thought that her friend was cute, but she said it was too creepy out. And although they thought it sounded fun, they decided that they didn't want to go. This day, I am beyond thankful that we didn't pressure those girls to go with us. I know deep down that some horrible shit could have happened if they did. So it's like 9 p.m. when I meet Jake by his house at the edge of this trail and lead him down the fire road, which was only a few miles up the mountains and into the forest. We both had backpacks with water and some foods, flashlight and shit, the usual. We never really used flashlights unless we were trying to get through difficult terrain. We enjoyed relying on the moon/starlight to guide us. About an hour into our journey, things started to get really odd. Everything just felt different. I'd gone to the ruins at night a handful of times before this trip, and it never really felt weird. The woods just seemed way too quiet. Although Jake didn't say anything, he looked very uneasy as well. But neither of us was gonna say, "I'm scared," and bitch out. So we continued right along. We rounded the bend and the ruins came into view about 100 yards away. We were surprised to see the glow of fire reflecting off the walls of the brick building, and we could hear voices coming from within. This isn't the first time we've encountered people here at night. We once ran into some older kids smoking weed. That turned out to be cool, and we paid us $5 for some Cliff Bars. But this felt different. Jake and I both slowed our pace. For what reason? I don't know, but it was like our instincts were telling us to be cautious. I grabbed Jake's shoulder, and we're both crouched down on the path. We should hike up to the ravine so we could get a better look at who's in there from above, I said to Jake, who nodded in agreement. We stealthily made our climb up the slope, and we stuck to the shadows as we approached the ruins. The closer we got, the clearer the voices became. And we can now hear that people are chanting and repeating in what seemed like a louder voice. We looked at one another. Each of our faces reflected a look that was both creeped out and confused. I think both of us wanted to get the fuck out of there at this point, but we both wanted to see what was going on in those fucking ruins. I mean, fuck it, we were like 12 years old. Curiosity was pretty much at its strongest at this point. We slid up behind some boulder, looked down at the brick building, and inside there were 8 people, men, and some women. Some were wearing creepy ass animal masks, while others were barefaced with ghostly white makeup on. All of them were wearing black. 2 were smoking what looked like to be a meth pipe. The most fucked up thing is that one dude had a big fucking antler headdress on. Straight devil cult shit right there. Right out of a movie. He was leading in the chant, and they were all circled around a bunch of candles set in a pattern, with a big book next to the dead fucking black cat in the middle. Jake and I looked at one another, and neither of us needed to say a word. We both retreated back and made our way back down to the ravine. We walked a steady pace, crouched down, and again we kept close to the side of the road trail that was within the shadows. We came to the bend where the ruins first came into view, and as we were about to pass it, we could hear some sounds, approaching footsteps. There's literally nowhere to go. If you try to climb up the slope, the noise would be easily heard by whoever was coming towards us. So we decided to place ourselves against the rocky slope and stay completely silent in the dark. I watched the light begin to grow as it came around to the bend. Jake and I are both silent. Neither of us are even breathing. I pull out a collapsible knife from my pocket and fold it out the blade. My hand's fucking shaking, my senses are completely peaked, and I've never felt such a flood of adrenaline in my entire life. The footsteps got louder and the light grows larger until a skinny 20-something pale guy wearing all black and carrying one of those battery-powered lanterns came into view. His face was completely illuminated by the lantern. His visage was riddled with scabs and a mouth hanging open, revealing brownish, fucked up teeth. Clearly this was some sort of meth freak, or he did not take care of his teeth at all. He's about 10 feet from us, walking briskly towards the ruins. For a second, I felt like he wasn't going to see us. But then he froze. I'm guessing his peripheral vision noticed 2 shadowy figures crouching in the dark. I honestly think the guy was more terrified than we were. Jake and I knew he was coming back, but he had no fucking idea we were there. He had that deer in the headlights look in his face, completely shocked, startled. The lights in his lantern were so weak so that only Jake and I were somewhat illuminated. There was a moment of complete stillness as we stared at one another. There was no wind, no sound, and all I could feel was, and all I could hear was, my heart pounding in my chest like a fucking jackhammer. It was like the world had fucking stopped. And then me and Jake just fucking blitzed the guy. We both smashed into him, and I guess it must have been the adrenaline that sent this dude flying back, almost sending him into the steep ravine. He cries out, literally screams at the top of his lungs, and Jake and I just started sprinting down Fire Road. At this point, everything gets somewhat blurry. High adrenaline made me somewhat black out for a minute. Although my memory is still kind of foggy, I remember this happening. We were sprinting down Fire Road, and the guy is screaming for help. For a second, I honestly thought I stabbed a dude when we attacked him, but I glanced at my knife, and thankfully there was no blood or anything. I remember hearing Jake saying, "Fuck, fuck, fuck, fuck," as we booked down the path. After the bend, where we pushed that dude down this long section of trail that kinda resembles a U that leads from one bend to the other, as we were halfway down the other bend, I look back and I see 4 people chasing us, after us with flashlights. We round the bend, still sprinting as fast as we possibly could, then both scramble up the hillside onto the Fin Deer Trail that runs adjacent to Fire Road from above. We slow down to a sort of jog, trying to keep quiet, but keeping our speed to ourselves. We needed to lose these fucking satanic meth heads. After a few minutes, we stopped to catch our breath. We were both panting like dogs. Honestly, I could hardly breathe. Dude, what the actual fuck What in the actual fuck just happened? Jake said, looking at me completely trembling from the whole ordeal. I thought I stabbed a guy, bro. I said while I held my hand white-knuckled still, gripping the knife. A few minutes pass and we hear people arguing down Fire Road about 100 yards or so behind us, and we stealthily made our way back towards Jake's house. About 30 minutes later, we hear the distant sound of cars starting and tearing out of the parking lot that is a ways down the valley near the end of Fire Road. Neither of us stopped moving until we passed through Jake's back door, and we both literally collapsed onto the kitchen floor, nearly fucking exhausted and covered in dirt. Jake's older brother strolls in and laughs at us for laying on the floor like idiots, but then he noticed a terrified look on our expressions, and he calls Dad to come downstairs. We tell Jake's dad what happened, and he calls the cops. They show up. They don't really believe or care or really even notice. I doubt that they even took the time to investigate. Actually, pointed out that we pretty much assaulted the guy and told us to contact the park rangers if we wanted them to leave or whatever. The rangers come the next day and says he'll check it out, but we haven't heard shit from him. Jake and I gave up hiking that night, and I don't think I'll ever go back to that fucking place ever again. So, creepy cultists, let's not meet again.
Stalked by Ratman by Hunter877. When I was in my early 20s, I worked graveyard at a 24-hour Walmart. I worked in the toy department in the back of the store. I mainly worked alone, and once in a while a friend would help me stock. But unless we were heavy on freight, you basically did your own thing and went home at 7 a.m. The first time I encountered the man we finally ended up calling Ratman was around midsummer, 2 years into my job at this store. He would come in around 5 a.m. and look at all the Hot Wheels cars. He was a collector. There seems to be this group of men in their 50s and 60s who enjoy grabbing up these cars. I normally was in the back tossing my trash and boxes when he would venture in, never really speaking or seeing me, but I would see him come and go. One morning, I happened to be down the aisle when he came from his little 97-cent treasures. He got about 2 inches from my face and introduced himself. I seriously could not tell you what his name was. He was about 5 foot tall, overweight, and in his 50s, I would guess. As later conversation confirmed, he had a daughter in her 20s. His breath was something that can only be described as rancid, rotting garbage mixed with onions. He literally had the worst breath, and he would get really close to your face. Our first encounter was just your average creeper feeling you get from someone. Maybe that dude at the bar you don't want hitting on you kind of feeling. I honestly thought nothing of it until he started showing up earlier to try and catch me on the sales floor. He would come up behind me and startle me, try to put his hand on my shoulder, or grab a box I was stocking and offer to hold it in front of his crotch while I got the items out. I was very young and stupid back then. I did not know how to handle creeper men, and honestly had only been hit on by a few guys before this that were creepy, to which I would never see them again. I just figured he was a creeper until one morning he came up to me and asked me out. Oh boy, here it goes. I have to try and blow this guy off and hope he goes away. He came up to me and said,
I noticed you like to eat at Chinese buffets, as you were there yesterday with your friend. I want to take you there. You seem to like the fresh fruit and stir-fry noodles.
What the fuck? I've never seen this guy at the place. However, my friend and I were there for lunch that day before he came in. Was he watching me and I didn't see him? He must have been and watched what I ate. The place was pretty empty that day as well. My friend and I always went after the lunch groups as she had anxiety and didn't like to eat in really busy places. I just froze and told him no thanks, that I'm very busy. I was worried for a bit, but He ended up just leaving me alone that morning. The next day, I did not see him in the store, and then I was off for 2 days. That Friday, when I returned to work, sure enough, he was there at 5 a.m. looking through the Hot Wheels. I was running behind and still had boxes to stock. He kept staring at me, and so I ended up calling my friend on the intercom phone to her department and asked for her help. She knew what was going on with this guy, so she came over and stalked down the aisle he was in. My friend gives off this "I'm nuts, don't fuck with me" vibe, and looking back, she was a little off her nut. She would probably have sliced his guts open with a piece of cardboard. I continued working and thought he had left, so I pushed my cart back to the stockroom, and just as I was about to turn the corner, he came from around the door and grabbed my arm. I twisted back and told him not to touch me. He scared me. He said he was sorry and was looking for me. He wanted to know if I'm always off on Wednesday and Thursday, as he came in and I wasn't here. I lied and told him my days off change often. He then says to me that he didn't think that was right because every Thursday afternoon, I go to H-E-B, a grocery store, with an older woman in a green car. This guy was stalking me. I did go to the store with my mom on Thursday afternoons. I broke away from this guy and the conversation. The next day he came in again, walked right up to me, and asked me out to lunch. I told him no, I was too busy, not wanting to date, and walked off. There had been a few small conversations early on with him and my friend about how he liked young girls to dance close to him. In general, he was creepy and perverted, we thought. My friend gave him the nickname Ratman. One morning, after we worked around 10 a.m., I was getting ready for bed when my phone rang. This was long before everyone had a cell phone, and I was about to cover up and drift off. I ended up getting out of bed and answering the phone. The voice on the other end of the line shook me to my core. It was Ratman.
Hello, Sally. I hope I didn't wake you. I want to know if you will go to the movies with me tonight.
I yelled at him, "How the hell did you get my number?" He ends up telling me that my friend gave it to him, and that she said I secretly was interested in him and too shy to tell him. I know my friend wouldn't do this. I hung up on him, and the next night asked my friend. She was upset and said no, she would never do that. At the time, my boss was sitting with us at the lunch table. He overheard our conversation and asked what was going on. Come to find out, my boss got a phone call in the store at 9 a.m. yesterday asking for verification for employment and asked if they had my current number on file. This was long before any security measures were put in place to where you can't just call and ask for information about who works there. So my boss thought I had applied for a new job and gave this idiot my number. This Ratman continued to call and harass me. The next week on my 2 days off, he called at least 30 times and left messages for me on my answering machine, even crying and screaming, asking why I didn't love him, and then calling back and leaving a message about how our trip we were going to take together to Mexico and how he couldn't wait to see me in my new swimsuit he bought. The guy was mental. There were a few times after that where I would be out at the store and once in the mall, and I would look over and see him across the food court or in the same store I was shopping in, watching. I ended up calling the police, which did no good, but I also changed my number. He finally stopped coming into the store. My boss said he would escort him out if he did come in, but my boss got a transfer out of the state, so this guy would pop in every once in a while. I changed departments and stopped stocking toys. I have long moved away and still keep in touch with the one friend I met at Walmart. Up until 5 years ago, he still was coming in the store, she says, just older but still creepy, and had started harassing another young girl who worked there. Let's not meet again, Ratman.
And now, for one little creepypasta at the end, the Dark Reflection Ritual. by Bishop Storm. Here's what you'll need to do this ritual. A mirror of any type. A candle of any size or color. Friends who will do it with you. It's optional, but highly suggested. I should probably warn you, once you begin this ritual, there's no way to stop it. What I'm saying is, don't start it unless you're planning on finishing it. Have you ever broken a mirror by accident or on purpose? Have you ever looked into a mirror by accident or on purpose? And have you ever felt when you looked into this mirror like there was something on the other side watching you? Or seeing something sinister lurking within your eyes, within your own reflection? You probably have heard the legend that breaking a mirror is 7 years of bad luck. Legends about mirrors have been around for hundreds of years. In particular, some ancient civilizations believed that there was some sort of purifying effect to mirrors. They believed that by looking into one's own reflection in the eyes would transfer one's negative energy into the reflection of a mirror. They believed that this had a cleansing effect, but also had hidden dangers. That is why breaking a mirror has been known to cause bad luck. Think about it. If this is true, then every time you look into a mirror, you're transferring bad mojo into it. Can you imagine how much negative energy just sitting inside your bathroom mirror? When you break that mirror, that negative energy is released and causes bad luck for anyone around it. For this ritual to work, you'll need a mirror that you don't mind breaking. According to the manifesto, both the risk and the eventual reward for this danger are stronger depending on how old the mirror is. It makes sense if you think about it. An older mirror has been looked into more, and therefore has more negative energy inside of it. In order to begin this ritual, you must look into your own reflection, transferring your negative energy into the mirror one last time. You only need to do this for a few seconds. Then, you need to lean forward and breathe onto the mirror, making it fog up with your breath. My sources refer to this as anointing the mirror with your own breath. At first, you might find this strange, but doing a little digging, you'll find that the word breath once meant spirit, or something similar to spirit. By breathing onto the mirror, you're symbolically linking yourself to that mirror and to the negative energy contained inside. This linking is crucial to the success of the ritual. Do not forget. Everyone in this group needs to do this step as well, before moving on to the next one. After this is completed, you need to light a candle. Use the candle to burn in the mirror. This agitates the negative energy inside. You only need to do this for a few seconds, or until there's a noticeable black mark on the mirror. Note that the longer you do this for, the more agitated the negative energy will become. Do so at your own risk. After this, the final step is breaking the mirror. Once this step is done, I suggest you start running right now. You see, it's a very common misconception that when a person breaks a mirror, they'll be followed by bad luck. This is simply not true. When a mirror is broken, bad energy stays in the spot near a broken mirror until it eventually dissipates, or at least it normally does. If you completed the above steps, you have tied yourself to the negative energies through the medium of your breath. This means that the negative energy will pursue you wherever you go. This is why I said earlier that it would be best to complete this ritual with a group. If you're the only one doing this ritual, then all the negative energy will have to pursue one person. But if there is a group, the negative energy will spread more out, more thinly, and as such will increase your odds of survival. Bad luck will follow you throughout the night. At first, it starts out with small incidents, chipped nail, flat tire. Then these incidents will begin to escalate through increasingly horrific happenings around you. Eventually, these incidents will become life-threatening. No matter how many people you do the ritual with, life-threatening incidents could happen. Like I said, don't start this ritual unless you plan on finishing it, because at this point, the only way you can finish it is by dying. The only piece of advice I can give you for surviving the night is to remember that negative energy is linked to you through your breath. Your breath is how the negative energy detects you. So if you find yourself in a bad situation, try holding your breath. This should make you temporarily invisible to it. Of course, you only can hold your breath for so long. Still, this technique might provide you with a few extra seconds to get out of a dangerous situation. At this point, you start asking yourself, why on earth would anyone engage in this ritual? Why would anyone ever risk their life like this? Well, most people who try to do this probably think it won't actually work, but there's actually a reason beyond that. The bad luck will chase you throughout the night, but if you manage to survive until dawn, not only will you find that your run of foul luck has ended, but a streak of good luck is about to begin. First lights of dawn have a special purifying property. If you survive until the morning, then the negative energy inside the mirror will be purified and will re-enter your body, filling you to the brim with positive energy. After this, everything will seem to go your way. You will find that people are genuinely nicer to you, and the opposite sex will become very much attracted to you. Or the same sex, if that's your thing. You'll succeed in everything you do, whether it be a job interview, important exam, business adventure. I would highly suggest you buy a lottery ticket. It should be noted that the amount and duration of good luck is equivalent to the amount of negative energy in your mirror. If you just bought a mirror at the store, then good luck. It will only last a couple of days and it won't even be that severe. If you use a older mirror though, your lucky streak will be far more powerful and it may last for months, years. Hell, you might become the next Powerball millionaire. If you have an old enough mirror, that is. If you use a mirror that is more personal and has a connection to you, such as a bathroom mirror or a mirror from your bedroom, then good fortune you'll experience will be more suited to your particular tastes and desires. One more thing I should probably warn you about is the timing of the ritual. The ritual needs to be started after sunset, with at least 6 hours until dawn. Two common tricks people try to use to, well, gauge the requirements of this ritual is by starting during the daytime with only a few minutes before dawn. Now you may be thinking, I can cheat the system, I can just start near dawn, and you know, if you're thinking that, it is possibly the least dangerous of these little cheats. If you start near dawn, the negative energy will not have enough time to fully manifest before being purified. The energy will simply dissipate into the air rather than doing anything. You might walk away with a little bit of a lucky streak, maybe you'll find a penny on the ground, but honestly, you'll be thinking it's a gigantic hoax. Starting during the day, though, is much more dangerous. People start during the day thinking that the daylight will instantly nuke the bad energy away and keep them safe. This is not true. Notice how I said that it was the lights of dawn that have purifying power, not the light of day. By starting during the day, you actually give bad luck more time to pursue you, thus decreasing your odds of survival significantly. You know, a lot of people might call you stupid or crazy for trying to start this ritual. I wouldn't, though I can understand the thinking that goes into it. I understand wanting to control your luck, both good and bad, rather than accepting the seemingly random twists and turns life has to throw at us. But let me let you know, the more bad luck you throw out into the air, the more likely that you're about to die. So understand that your life has value and that you may want to accept life as it is before attempting to do something stupid and crazy like this. You have been warned, and this will be your only warning from this point on. Do this ritual at your own risk. With that being said, I'm your host, That Creepy Reading, and today I'm signing off.
The reason I always lock my door. This was back in 2012 or so. I was living in a 3-bedroom apartment with my best friend Lisa and another roomie, Derek, along with 2 cats, Mango and Jojo. Over the past few months, the newspapers have been full of stories about a guy sneaking into young women's homes in the south end of my city. They would usually wake up to find him watching them sleep, or else see someone peeking into their windows. Usually, he just looked. Sometimes he spoke, and his actions eventually progressed to sexual touching. He would always flee before police arrived, and usually before the women involved could even fully grasp what was going on. We lived in what was technically the north end of the city, though kind of on the edge. And, although Lisa and I were technically in this creep's target demographic, neither of us were students and we weren't in an all-female house, so I'd never really worried about it. About a day or two before the incident in question, the papers reported that a suspect had been arrested. One Saturday night, Lisa was working the overnight shift at our local fast food restaurant. Derek and I watched some Scrubs and both headed to bed around midnight. I woke up to the sound of the apartment door opening at some point. I assumed that Lisa was coming home from her shift, but glanced at my phone and saw it was only around 4 a.m. Lisa's shift didn't end until 7. An off feeling immediately crept over me. I wondered if I'd dreamt the door opening, but I knew I hadn't, even though every part of my subconscious was screaming that something was wrong. The rational side of my brain won over. Maybe the shift had been especially quiet. Since Lisa's work was so close to our home, they might have let her go home early, or she might have been sick. It was also possible that Derek had gone out without my noticing and was now returning. I also thought that maybe I'd heard him leaving, although it wasn't like him to be up so early. I realized that I hadn't heard the click of the lock. This meant that whoever had arrived or left hadn't locked the door behind them. Both Lisa and Derek were from small towns, and hadn't quite gotten in the habit of locking the door now that they were in the city. I decided that, since I was up, I should at least lock the door. I opened my bedroom door to peer out. I was wearing a tank top and underwear, and didn't want to make Derek uncomfortable if he was within sight of my room. As I opened the door, I found myself face to face with a man, his hand still reaching out for my bedroom doorknob. I must have startled him, because he took a step back. I'm not sure why I didn't yell or scream. Maybe I was too scared. Instead, in a calm voice, I asked, "Who are you? And why are you in my apartment?" My brain was rushing to rationalize this guy's presence. He was around my age. Maybe Lisa or Derek had forgotten to tell me that they were letting a friend stay over. But no. Lisa was at work, and Derek had gone to bed when I had. Maybe he was drunk and wandered into the wrong apartment. It would explain the goofy grin on his face. Except that, as I looked again, that grin wasn't goofy. It was manic. He didn't answer me, so I asked again, "Who are you, and what the hell are you doing in my apartment?" No answer. He kept grinning. I can't remember his hair color, though it might have been reddish blonde. I couldn't tell you what color his eyes were, what he was wearing, or whether he had anything in his hands. I have a weird sense when I look back on it that there was something in his hand. A weapon. A bottle of beer. I have no fucking clue, because his smile was so completely and utterly terrifying that I can't remember anything else. I suddenly remembered that Derek was down the hall. I realized I could call for help. Instead, I told him, "You need to leave. Now." He kept grinning, and my heart kept racing. He was too close for me to be sure of being able to close my bedroom door against him. I repeated myself again. He kept grinning, but he turned and left. I waited for a few seconds and then leapt the distance between my bedroom door and the apartment door, flinging the dead bolt and sliding the chain into place. I retreated back into my room and texted Lisa to let her know what had happened. The next day, my roommates both reported that they had not given anyone permission to enter the apartment. They also agreed to be more careful about locking the door. That morning, I read in the newspaper that the police had released their suspect in the sleepwatching case because there was no proof. Although one guy was eventually arrested and charged in connection to the case, differing victim reports suggest that more than one man got up to creepiness in my city around that time. So, creepy guy who was quite possibly a serial sleepwatcher and whose grin still occasionally pops up in my nightmares. Let's never meet again.